He never imagined that one slap, just one slap, would turn his entire life into a nightmare. In front of the whole crowd, he dared to raise his hand against the billionaire's black wife. And within seconds, the man who thought he was powerful was on his knees, begging for mercy. This is the story of a mistake so big, it shocked the world. Let's continue this story. The crowd gasped so loudly that the sound echoed through the grand ballroom, bouncing off the golden walls like thunder. No one could believe what had just happened. In the middle of that glittering charity gala, under the soft glow of chandeliers, a single action had turned the glamorous night into a storm. A man, ordinary in his arrogance, had raised his hand and slapped the wife of the most powerful billionaire in the city. The slap wasn't just physical. It was loud enough to silence the music, the laughter, and every whispered conversation in the hall. For a few seconds, the world seemed to stop. Everyone froze, their eyes darting between the trembling woman and the furious billionaire standing just a few steps away. Her name was Naomi, a graceful black woman whose presence radiated elegance, not just because of the stunning silk dress she wore, but because of the quiet strength in her eyes. She wasn't just a billionaire's wife. She was a woman respected for her kindness, for the way she spoke to everyone with the same warmth, whether they were waiters or CEOs. People admired her, envied her, but above all, they respected her. And now, in front of all these people, a stranger had dared to put his hand on her face. The man who slapped her was Robert Hale. He was the kind of person who thought money gave him the right to insult anyone he pleased. He wasn't poor. Far from it. He was a mid-level investor who had clawed his way into this elite event by pulling every string he could. But compared to the billionaire whose wife he had just attacked, Robert was nothing more than dust in the wind. He hadn't thought of the consequences. In his drunken arrogance, he believed this was just another party where he could do and say whatever he wanted. But the man watching, the one whose wife had been struck, was not just another guest. His name was Donovan Pierce, a billionaire whose empire stretched across industries, tech, real estate, energy. People whispered that he had the kind of power that could make or break fortunes with a single phone call. And tonight, the slap wasn't just against Naomi. It was an insult to him, to his name, to everything he stood for. Donovan's jaw tightened, his fists curled, but his voice, when it finally came, was calm, too calm. "Did you just put your hands on my wife?" The words cut through the silence like a blade. Robert's smirk faded. His drunken courage began to melt the moment Donovan stepped forward. The crowd parted like water, leaving Robert exposed in the middle of the floor, with Naomi standing quietly, one hand pressed to her cheek. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with a steady dignity that made Robert's actions look even more pathetic. Robert swallowed hard, trying to laugh it off. It was just a joke, he stammered, but his voice cracked. No one laughed. No one even breathed. The entire hall seemed to wait for Donovan's response. Donovan didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His presence alone demanded obedience. "A joke," he said softly, almost dangerously. "You think humiliating my wife in front of hundreds of people is a joke?" Robert's legs suddenly felt weak. For the first time in years, fear crept into his chest. He looked around for support, for someone to come to his defense, but every single guest had stepped back, their faces cold and unforgiving. No one wanted to be associated with him now. His so-called friends had vanished into the crowd. He was alone. Naomi slowly lowered her hand from her cheek. Instead of breaking down, she straightened her shoulders and looked Robert directly in the eyes. "You don't know me," she said calmly, her voice steady and sharp. "But tonight, you'll learn what it means to disrespect a woman who has done nothing but show you kindness." The crowd erupted into murmurs. People admired her strength. But all Robert could think about was the icy fire in Donovan's gaze. The billionaire didn't move closer, but the silence around him grew heavier, suffocating Robert until he could barely breathe. His arrogance was gone, replaced by panic. "I'm sorry," Robert blurted out, his voice desperate. "I didn't mean it. It was the wine. I wasn't thinking." He stepped back, his hands trembling. "Please forgive me." But it was too late. The begging had begun. The billionaire's lips curved into the faintest, most chilling smile. "You think an apology wipes away disrespect?" Donovan said. "No, Robert. Actions have consequences. And you're about to learn that in front of every single person here." The crowd leaned in, hungry to see what would happen next. Some whispered that Donovan would destroy Robert's career overnight. Others said he might have him thrown out and banned from every event in the city. But no one truly knew, because Donovan Pierce was unpredictable, and when it came to protecting Naomi, he had no limits. As the music remained frozen and the room held its breath, Robert Hale's life was about to change forever. All because of one slap. The silence in the ballroom felt heavier with each passing second. Robert's heart hammered in his chest as Donovan Pierce stepped closer. The billionaire wasn't rushing, wasn't shouting, and that calmness was far more terrifying than any burst of anger could have been. Robert had seen men lose their tempers before. They flared up and burned out. But Donovan? He was ice. Controlled, deliberate, and dangerous. Naomi stood tall, her cheeks still red from the slap, but her chin lifted proudly. Her strength only made Robert's cowardice clearer. He realized then that he hadn't just struck any woman. He had struck a woman whose grace and dignity commanded respect on her own, and whose husband could erase him from existence without lifting a finger. "Security," Donovan said simply, his voice deep and unshakable. Two towering men in black suits appeared instantly, moving through the crowd as if they had been waiting for the signal all along. Their presence made Robert's knees wobble. He backed away, raising his hands. "No, wait, please. It was a mistake. I don't want any trouble," he stammered, desperation spilling out of him. But Donovan's eyes never wavered. "You've already made trouble," he replied coldly. "Now you'll deal with the consequences." The guards flanked Robert, their hands gripping his arms with steel-like force. He tried to pull away, but their grip tightened until he winced. The crowd began to murmur again. Phones lifted discreetly as guests recorded the scene. Robert's humiliation was now being captured, broadcasted to anyone willing to watch. Naomi placed a gentle hand on her husband's arm. "Donovan," she said softly, her voice steady but calm. "Don't lower yourself to his level." Her words were not pleading, but wise, as though reminding him that vengeance wasn't always the answer. Donovan glanced at her, his stern expression softening slightly in the presence of the woman he loved. He nodded once, then looked back at Robert. "You're lucky my wife has more grace than you'll ever deserve," Donovan said. "Otherwise, you wouldn't be walking out of here tonight." The words hit Robert harder than the guard's grip. His face turned pale, sweat dripping down his forehead as the reality of his situation set in. He had come here expecting to rub shoulders with the powerful, to drink and boast, to feel important for one night. Instead, he had managed to destroy his reputation in seconds. As the guards dragged him toward the exit, Robert's voice cracked with panic. "Please, Donovan, don't do this. I'll lose everything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll do anything you want." But Donovan didn't even look at him. Naomi squeezed his arm gently, silently guiding him back toward the table where they had been seated before the incident. The music hadn't resumed, and the eyes of the entire ballroom remained locked on them, waiting to see what the billionaire would decide. When Robert reached the doors, Donovan finally raised a hand, stopping the guards. The room froze again. Robert looked back over his shoulder, his face twisted with fear and hope. "Bring him back," Donovan said. Gasps filled the air. The guards obeyed immediately. dragging Robert back into the center of the room. He stumbled, nearly falling, but they held him upright until he was standing once more in front of Donovan and Naomi. Donovan took a slow step forward, his eyes boring into Robert's. "You wanted attention tonight, didn't you?" he asked. His tone was calm, but sharp enough to cut through steel. "You wanted to make yourself feel big in front of powerful people. So here you are. Everyone's watching. Say what you have to say." Robert's throat tightened. His lips trembled as he looked around at the sea of eyes staring at him, some filled with disgust, others with quiet satisfaction. The humiliation was unbearable. But with Donovan's piercing gaze fixed on him, he had no choice. "I apologize," Robert stuttered, his voice breaking. "Naomi, I am so sorry. I should never have touched you. It was unforgivable. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking." Naomi's eyes stayed steady, her face calm but unreadable. She didn't answer right away, and the silence stretched painfully. Robert's chest felt like it was collapsing. "Louder," Donovan said suddenly, his voice commanding. Robert's entire body flinched. He cleared his throat and forced his voice to rise. "I apologize," he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. "Naomi, I'm sorry. I was wrong." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some people turned away in disgust. Others recorded gleefully, knowing this moment would be the talk of the city. Naomi finally spoke, her voice even and controlled. "You don't need to shout, Robert. What you need is to learn respect. Respect for women, respect for yourself, and respect for the people around you. Until then, no apology will matter." Her words struck harder than any punishment. Robert's head dropped, shame burning through him. Donovan gave a small nod to the guards, and they released their grip, stepping back. But Donovan wasn't finished. "You will leave this event," he said, "and tomorrow, when the sun rises, you'll realize that what you've lost tonight is not just your dignity. You've lost access. You've lost doors that will never open for you again. You thought you could build your empire on arrogance and disrespect. Now, watch it crumble." Robert opened his mouth, but no sound came. His world had ended in front of hundreds of witnesses. The billionaire had spoken, and that was enough. As the guards escorted him out of the ballroom for the last time, Robert felt the weight of every eye on him. He had walked in as someone who thought he mattered, but he walked out as nothing. And in the middle of it all, Naomi stood like a queen, untouched, dignified, and stronger than ever. While Donovan Pierce made sure the world never forgot the price of disrespecting her. The doors slammed shut behind Robert, and for a long moment, the ballroom remained suspended in silence. The music still hadn't started, and the guests looked at Donovan and Naomi with a mix of awe and unease. Everyone had just witnessed power displayed in its purest form. Not through violence, but through authority, presence, and words that carried weight heavier than steel. Naomi gently exhaled, brushing her fingers against her cheek one last time before lowering her hand. She didn't look shaken anymore. She looked unbreakable. Donovan turned to her, his expression softening as he leaned close. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly, so only she could hear. She nodded, her lips curving into a faint, reassuring smile. "I'm fine, Donovan. Don't let this ruin the night. We came here to help people, not to waste time on men like him." Those words, simple and sincere, pulled Donovan back from the edge of his fury. He admired her more in that moment than ever before. Naomi wasn't just his wife. She was his anchor, his reminder of what mattered beyond pride and power. Slowly, the band in the corner began to play again, soft music filling the air as if to gently erase the tension. Guests cautiously returned to their conversations, though their eyes kept darting toward Donovan and Naomi, whispering about what had just happened. Some admired Donovan's control. Others praised Naomi's strength. But none would ever forget the lesson that had been delivered tonight. Meanwhile, outside the ballroom, Robert Hale sat on the steps of the Grand Hotel, his face buried in his hands. The cool night air did nothing to ease the heat of humiliation burning inside him. His phone buzzed endlessly. Missed calls, messages, and notifications flooding in. Word had already begun to spread. Clips of him slapping Naomi were already on social media, followed by the footage of him begging for forgiveness. He opened one of the videos, and the sound of his own desperate voice screaming, "I apologize," echoed back at him. His stomach twisted. This wasn't just embarrassment. This was destruction. The world of the wealthy and powerful thrived on reputation, and his had just been obliterated. A message popped up from one of his closest business partners. "We're pulling out. Don't contact us again." Another one followed. "Your actions tonight have made you untouchable. Don't bother showing up at the board meeting tomorrow." Robert's chest tightened as the reality of Donovan's words sank in. His empire, built on arrogance, shady deals, and fragile alliances, was already crumbling. The doors Donovan had spoken about were indeed closing, one by one, faster than Robert could comprehend. He wanted to scream, to fight, to blame the alcohol, but deep down, he knew the truth. He had brought this upon himself. One moment of drunken arrogance had undone years of ambition. And it wasn't just about slapping Naomi. It was about who Naomi was, what she represented, and who she was married to. He had insulted dignity itself, in front of the one man who could ensure he paid the price. Back inside, Naomi excused herself for a moment and stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the glittering city. She needed a breath of fresh air. Donovan followed shortly after, slipping his jacket over her shoulders to shield her from the cool night breeze. "You didn't deserve that, Naomi," he said, his voice low and filled with unspoken anger. "No one touches you. No one humiliates you." She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "And no one controls you, Donovan. Don't let people like him change who you are. The man I love isn't defined by how he punishes others. He's defined by how he lifts people up." Donovan looked at her, truly looked at her, and for a brief moment, the weight of his empire, his reputation, his power, all of it seemed secondary. She was right. She always was. That was her gift, to see through the storms and remind him of the calm beyond them. He kissed her forehead softly. "You're stronger than anyone I know," he murmured. Naomi smiled. "That's because I have you beside me." But even as they shared that quiet moment, Donovan knew the night wasn't over. Robert Hale would face the consequences of his actions, whether he liked it or not. The humiliation in front of the world was only the beginning, because Donovan Pierce wasn't just a man who defended his wife's honor in public. He was a man who made sure such disrespect never happened again. Later that night, after the gala ended, Robert sat alone in his expensive car that suddenly felt like a coffin. The phone buzzed again, this time with a call. He answered desperately, hoping it was someone willing to give him a chance. But the voice on the other end was cold, distant. "Mr. Hale, this is your bank. We regret to inform you that due to certain developments, your credit lines have been frozen." Robert's breath caught in his throat. "What? No, you can't." But the call had already ended. His hands shook violently as he realized Donovan's reach extended far beyond a single ballroom. This wasn't just about humiliation. It was about power. Robert had slapped the wife of a man who controlled industries, who whispered into the ears of bankers, politicians, and investors. And now, he was paying the price with everything he owned. He slammed his fists against the steering wheel, screaming into the night. But no one heard him. No one cared. Inside the hotel suite, Donovan and Naomi sat together in the quiet glow of the city lights. Naomi leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. He stroked her hair gently, still seething at the thought of what had happened. "Do you think he learned his lesson?" Naomi asked softly. Donovan's eyes hardened as he gazed out the window. "Oh, he's only just beginning to learn." The next morning, the city buzzed with a story that spread faster than wildfire. Every news outlet, every blog, every social media platform was consumed by the footage from the gala. Headlines screamed the same message in different words. Investor slaps billionaire's wife in public, begs for forgiveness moments later. The video clips had gone viral overnight, reaching millions of views before Robert Hale had even opened his eyes. When he finally did wake, his phone was flooded with thousands of messages. Some were mocking him, some were condemning him, but most were simply sharing the video with laughing emojis or sharp words like "career over." He tried to scroll past them, but the shame clung to him like poison. In a panic, he dressed quickly and rushed to his office, hoping his position, his wealth, his so-called influence could still hold together what little remained of his reputation. But when he arrived, the building lobby was filled with reporters, their cameras flashing, their questions cutting through the air like arrows. "Mr. Hale, do you have anything to say about slapping Naomi Pierce? Are you aware your business partners have already distanced themselves from you? Do you regret what you did?" He shoved past them, refusing to answer, his jaw clenched. The moment he stepped inside, he sensed something was wrong. The usual smiles from the receptionists were gone. His employees looked at him not with respect, but with disgust or worse, pity. By the time he reached his office, his assistant handed him a folder with trembling hands. "What's this?" Robert demanded. She swallowed hard. "It's termination notices, sir. The board held an emergency meeting early this morning. They voted you out." The words hit him like a physical blow. His legs nearly buckled. "They can't do that," he whispered, but even as he said it, he knew they could. They already had. His empire was slipping away like sand through his fingers. Meanwhile, in a penthouse high above the city, Donovan and Naomi sat together, sipping coffee while the world reacted below. Naomi scrolled through her phone, shaking her head softly at the headlines. "They're tearing him apart," she murmured. Donovan didn't flinch. His gaze was fixed out the window, calm and steady. "Good," he said simply. "He disrespected you. Now he'll understand what that costs." Naomi looked at him carefully, her eyes filled with both admiration and concern. "Donovan, you've made your point. He's humiliated. His career is finished. Isn't that enough?" Donovan turned to her, his expression softening when he met her eyes. "Naomi, if I let this go lightly, others will think they can do the same. This city needs to know there are lines you don't cross. And hurting you is the line no one should ever dare to approach." Naomi reached across the table and touched his hand gently. "I don't need the whole world to fear you. I just need you to know that I'm safe with you. That's enough for me." Her words lingered, sinking into Donovan's heart. He squeezed her hand, torn between his instinct for dominance and his love for the woman who balanced his power with compassion. While they sat in the comfort of their home, Robert Hale's downfall accelerated. By noon, his name was trending for all the wrong reasons. His investors had cut ties, his clients were fleeing, and even his own family refused to answer his calls. Every attempt he made to repair the damage was met with closed doors and cold stares. Desperate, he tried to reach Donovan directly. He called his office, his assistants, even his personal driver, but no one answered. Donovan Pierce was untouchable, and Robert was invisible. By evening, Robert found himself standing outside Donovan's skyscraper headquarters, waiting in the rain. He didn't care about the cameras anymore. He didn't care about the whispers of strangers who pointed and mocked. He just wanted one chance, one moment to beg Donovan in person. Hours passed, the rain soaking through his expensive suit until he looked like a broken man. Finally, A convoy of black cars pulled up to the building. The doors opened, and Donovan stepped out, Naomi beside him, sheltered under a sleek umbrella. They looked like royalty, untouchable and radiant. Robert staggered forward, his voice hoarse from shouting. "Donovan, please, just hear me out. Please." The guards moved instantly, blocking him, but Donovan raised a hand. Slowly, he turned his gaze toward the man who had once carried himself with arrogance, now reduced to nothing more than a beggar in the rain. "Do you know why you're standing out here, Robert?" Donovan asked, his voice steady and cold. Robert's lips trembled. "Because I made a mistake. Because I disrespected Naomi. I regret it, Donovan. I regret it more than you can ever know." Donovan's eyes narrowed. "No, you're out here because you thought you could buy respect with money and arrogance. You believed power was about stepping on others. Tonight, you've learned what real power is. And it has nothing to do with you." Naomi's gaze softened as she watched Robert shiver. She leaned closer to her husband and whispered, "He's broken enough, Donovan. Let him walk away with what little dignity he has left." For a moment, Donovan said nothing. Then he gave a small nod. He looked back at Robert one last time. "This is the last chance you'll ever get. Walk away. Disappear from this city. Don't ever let me see your face again." Robert opened his mouth, but no words came. He knew he had no choice. He bowed his head, turned, and walked away into the rain, his figure shrinking until he was nothing more than a shadow swallowed by the night. Naomi squeezed Donovan's hand gently. "You did the right thing." Donovan exhaled, finally letting the storm inside him settle. He pulled her closer under the umbrella, whispering, "I'll always protect you, no matter the cost." And together, they walked inside, leaving behind the man who had learned, too late, the price of disrespect. The rain kept falling long after Robert disappeared into the night, washing away the last trace of his pride. By the time he reached his apartment, he was drenched, his body heavy, and his mind broken. He stepped inside to find stacks of unopened letters on the floor. Termination notices, debt reminders, lawsuits. He collapsed onto the couch, staring at the ceiling, realizing how quickly his empire had turned into ashes. Just 24 hours ago, he was arrogant enough to believe the world owed him respect. Now, he was a man everyone despised, his name forever tied to humiliation. For the next few days, Robert avoided the outside world. Every time he turned on the TV, he saw his face plastered across the news. Every time he checked his phone, more messages arrived. People mocking him, strangers demanding apologies, former allies cutting ties. He couldn't escape it. The slap, the begging, Naomi's calm dignity, Donovan's cold authority. It replayed in his head like a punishment he couldn't run from. Meanwhile, Donovan and Naomi carried on with their lives, but the memory of that night lingered. Naomi noticed the way people looked at her now, not just with admiration, but with reverence. She had faced public humiliation and turned it into a moment of strength. Many women reached out to her, sending letters, messages, and calls. They told her that seeing her stand tall in the face of disrespect had inspired them, that she had given them courage to speak up against those who belittled them. One evening, Naomi sat on the balcony with Donovan, her voice soft as she shared the messages with him. "These women, they see me as someone stronger than I feel," she admitted. Donovan smiled faintly. "That's because you are strong, Naomi. Stronger than most. You didn't let one man's foolishness break you. You showed the world dignity doesn't fall when it's struck, it rises." Naomi looked at him with warmth in her eyes. "And you showed them what it means to protect someone without losing control. Donovan, I was proud of you that night. Not because you're powerful, but because you listened when I asked you not to let anger consume you." For the first time since the incident, Donovan felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had wanted revenge, but Naomi had wanted peace. Together, they had found a balance. But Robert's story didn't end quietly. A week later, a newspaper published a long article exposing his past. Failed deals, fraud, mistreatment of employees. With his reputation already shattered, the truth spread like fire. Lawsuits piled up, creditors demanded their money, and within days, Robert Hale filed for bankruptcy. His mansion was repossessed, his cars taken, and his so-called friends vanished entirely. One night, Robert stood outside the same hotel where the gala had been held. He looked up at the glittering windows, remembering the night that destroyed him. The laughter, the music, the slap, the begging, it haunted him. He realized then that his mistake wasn't just about Naomi. It was about every arrogant choice he had made. The slap had been the spark, but the fire had been building inside him for years. For the first time in his life, Robert admitted to himself that he wasn't the victim. He was the cause. Inside that same hotel, another charity gala was being held. Donovan and Naomi attended once more, walking hand in hand. The whispers were still there, but this time they weren't whispers of scandal. They were whispers of respect. Guests greeted Naomi with admiration, praising her for her strength, her composure, her grace. Donovan remained at her side, a quiet reminder that true power didn't need to shout. As Naomi spoke with guests, Donovan stepped aside for a moment, looking out over the crowd. He saw men who had once underestimated Naomi, now bowing their heads in respect. He saw women inspired, uplifted, standing taller because of her. And he realized that what had started as an insult had become a legacy. Later that night, as they drove home, Naomi leaned against him. "Do you think Robert will ever recover?" she asked quietly. Donovan paused before answering. "Recover? Perhaps, but he'll never be the same. Sometimes life teaches lessons in the hardest way possible. Maybe losing everything will finally teach him humility." Naomi sighed softly. "I don't hate him, Donovan. I pity him. Because all the money in the world can't buy what really matters. Respect, love, and dignity." Donovan wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "And that's why you'll always have everything he never will." Outside, the city lights sparkled like stars. Inside the car, silence settled comfortably between them, not heavy with tension, but warm with understanding. They had faced a storm together, and now, they had come out stronger. Robert Hale faded from the public eye in the weeks that followed, a forgotten figure in a world that moved on quickly. But Donovan and Naomi remained, symbols of strength, dignity, and true power. The story of that night was told again and again, not as a tale of scandal, but as a reminder that arrogance falls, that disrespect destroys, and that dignity, when defended, always wins. And so, the man who had once thought himself untouchable learned his lesson the hardest way imaginable. With one slap, one mistake, and one moment that turned him from a guest of the powerful into a beggar in the rain. Naomi never spoke of Robert again. Donovan rarely did either. But in the silence of their love, in the strength of their bond, the memory of that night became less about humiliation and more about victory. Because in the end, it wasn't Robert's slap that people remembered. It was Naomi's dignity. And that, more than anything, was the true legacy of that night. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe, because we've got even more unbelievable stories coming your way. You won't want to miss what's next.